Good afternoon, everyone. At this time, I would like to call to order the November 20th, 2025 regular board meeting of the North County Transit San Diego Railroad. Before we begin, members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page, please note that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. In addition, you must also register by sending an email containing your name or phone number and the agenda item on which you wish to speak to clerk@nctd.org. Suhail Rodriguez, clerk of the board, will take a verbal roll call for attendance.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sinella. Vice Chair Sinella.
Here.
Sorry. Board Member Martinez.
Here.
Board Alternate Shin.
Present.
Board Member O'Hara.
Present.
Board Member Garcia. Board Member Joyce.
Present.
Board Member Desmond.
Here.
Board Member Edson.
Present.
Board Member Karina.
Present.
Contreras. Sorry. And Board Alternate Coleman. Okay. This completes the roll call with Board Member Garcia and Board Alternate Coleman absent.
Great, thank you. And I'd like to ask our special guest today, Board Member Shin, to lead us in the pledge.
Please rise, face the flag. Right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
Suhail, will you please provide us a safety brief and a review of the evacuation procedures?
Yes. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevator. Once clear to the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of this building. There is a portable defibrillator on the first and third floor, and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you, Suhail. Are there any changes, Suhail, to the agenda today?
No, Vice Chair.
Great. Suhail, do we have any general public comments today?
We do have one in-person public comment on general public comment, Ms. Silvia Sanchez, and I will be translating for her with your permission.
Great, thank you for doing that.
¿Puede poner el micrófono, por favor? Tienes 3 minutos.
Ok, buenas tardes a todos. Hoy yo vengo a tocar el tema de 3 bases que nos están perjudicando mucho con sus cambios de horarios que han hecho. No sé si aquí es problema del dispatcher.
Si me permite, por favor. Okay. She's here to address a few comments that have affected her service where she lives.
304, 388 y el 604 son las rutas que yo uso y más compañeras no pudieron asistir por los horarios. Ellas trabajan.
¿Me permite? Si puede, por favor. Okay, this is related to routes 304, 388, and 604. She is accompanied, she's not accompanied by other people that ride that route today, but they are also, she's speaking on their behalves.
Ok, yo tuve que arriesgar medio día de mi trabajo, perdí para venir a hablar porque esto es muy importante para mí. Más el 304 que teníamos de horario el año pasado, ese bus venía de la estación de Encinitas 345, pasaba en la Saxony 350. No los eliminaron sin ninguna notificación.
Me permite. Sorry, but me permite, por favor. She's here to talk about specifically 304 route, last year's schedule that goes to Encinitas and connects to, ¿a dónde conecta? El 304.
Saxony
Road
Palomar College.
hasta until Palomar College Road.
Ahora nos los mandaron por la Santa Fe Drive. No conecta con el Sprinter. Yo vivo en Valley Center.
Okay. This now it connects through Santa Fe, and she lives in Valley Center, and there's no way for her to use that route.
Ahora yo pienso, yo he estado hable y hable, no he podido venir porque se ha cancelado el año pasado antes que hicieran el libro. Intenté venir pero por cosas de enfermedad no pude.
She wasn't able to come previously to talk about it, but she's here today to talk about this.
Ajá, lo que a mí me interesa es que si es posible que nos regresen ese horario que pasa en la Saxony, porque yo mis días de trabajo con diferentes personas seniors at home.
Is there any way to bring back this previous schedule so she can get to Saxony Road and complete her work, get to work on time?
So, ese bus pasaba ahí 3:50, llegaba al Palomar para yo conectarme con el tren de las 4:40,
She was able to connect to the 440 Sprinter previously, and now she cannot do that.
porque el bus 388 saca 5:3 y el último es 7:3. Yo no alcanzo ese, no es justo que yo me quede 2 horas a esperar o pagando Uber para irme a mi casa.
If she took the 388 route,
Suhail, when there's translation, I'm okay with doubling the time because
yeah,
it takes
yeah, I
twice
just
as long.
stopped it. Thank you, Vice Chair. ¿Puedes repetir esa última parte, por favor? Discúlpame.
Que es que yo me conectaba con ese bus a tomar el bus 388 a Valley Center, a Pala 5:3. Ahora ya no viene ese bus.
Okay.
Yo me quedo 2 horas en la estación de escondido o si quiero llegar a mi casa pagando Uber. He pagado mucho Uber, traigo mi comprobante, mucho Uber.
She says that she's now spending money on Ubers because she has a 2-hour time difference from when the last Sprinter connectivity allows her to get home. Now she's spending 2 hours waiting for the next train.
Y yo pienso que hagan cambios pensando en nosotros que somos los usuarios, no nada más en ustedes. Porque yo pienso que no van a andar quemando gas solos. Nosotros necesitamos de ustedes, ustedes de nosotros.
She wishes that we think of the riders that use the routes first before making these changes that are impacting them.
Yo les pago el pase del mes adelantado, pueden invertir. Yo sé que no es suficiente lo que pagamos, pero el gobierno pienso les ayuda.
She believes that we get funds from the government and she pays her monthly pass on time, so she wishes there's something we can do.
So, no sé aquí qué está pasando, si es el del dispatcher el que está haciendo estos cambios sin conexiones. Ahorita le quitaron al 304 que va para la Saxony en la mañana, ahora peor, me quitaron el de la mañana, me quitaron el de la tarde, el de la mañana sacaba 7:52, es el tren que me conectaba con ese porque es mi primer base, el 88 de las 7.
She believes that there's a dispatching error and it should be looked into because now her morning commute is also impacted.
Saca 7:45, el tren llega casi a las 7:50, ya no lo alcanzamos. Ahora me estoy quedando hasta el de las 8:45, corté 2 horas de mi trabajo para yo llegar después casi a las 10 a mi trabajo. Yo pienso que no es justo.
She's getting to work late because of the morning commute connectivity issues and also the evening commute.
Ese yo desearía no nada más por mí. Hay muchas que trabajan en la Saxony. Estuvieron pelea, hablando, pero pues allá en la oficina nomás toman nota, no sé si se las hacen llegar, no han podido venir.
She has made several calls to customer service, also her friends that take the same route, and she just wishes that Saxony Road was added as a stop.
Era el horario que era del año pasado. No tengo libro ya para
Yeah.
traerlo.
It was last year's service route.
Ahora, otro de los bases que nada más saca 2 rutas en la mañana y en la tarde es el 604. Ese también es muy importante para todas las compañeras que limpian casas, hacen babysitting. Esa ruta también es muy importante. Espero que no nos las cancelen.
Route 604 is an important route as well that she gets to work, so please do not touch that one.
Ahora, el 388. El 388.
Si puede, por favor, continuar y acabar sus comentarios, por favor,
Ajá,
porque
ok.
gracias.
Terminamos con el...
Okay. Y alguien va a hablarle ahí en la puerta con sus
Perdón.
preguntas. Hay una muchacha ahí atrás, Odalis, que le va a ayudar con sus preguntas, ¿ok?
Ok.
Ok, muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Ok.
Yep, thank you for coming. And thank you, Cecile. Any other speakers today?
Yes, we do. We have another person here today, Mark Stevens. You can please come up to the podium. You can turn on your mic, and you have 3 minutes, Mr. Stevens.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for your service and the opportunity to make some brief comments about the proposed coaster train platform in downtown San Diego. I'm a certified planner with over 40 years of experience and have been a downtown resident for over 24 years. Upon learning about this proposed project a few years ago, I attained what limited information could be accessed on the website and contacted staff by phone. I've talked to at least a dozen people. I filed 2 complaints and still been unable to find any reliable representative plans that show what's going to be where other than color renderings. While it may provide some potential benefits, it would have major adverse impacts during construction and be up to 22 trains a day added for an area that's already covered by trolley service. So you can just get off the coaster of the Surfliner and take the trolley, or even just walk if you're going to the convention center or Petco Park or wherever you're going to. And the website, your website, which hasn't been updated for this project in well over a year, indicates the construction is to commence in fall 2025 and be operational in early 2027. And keep in mind, this has been in process for over 10 years. There's been zero public outreach in terms of identifying what the impacts might be, and again, no outreach at all to local communities. And an NTCD representative was recently interviewed in television and stated the train platform should be operational by 2027. And again, I was assured that before any construction started, there would be notification of the affected communities along the route. And it's over $30 million. And again, there's been no public outreach, no to scale plans. A person I know made a public records request, got an 8.5 by 11 drawing, and it didn't even know the difference between the Martin Luther King Jr. Promenade and the Bayshore Bikeway, which are both critical public facilities that need to be protected and preserved. And if it has to proceed, it would make a whole lot more sense to put it on the east side of Fifth Avenue rather than the west side, because it would be further from the affected residences, and there's tons more right-of-way on the east side, and it's right next to Petco Park, which is by far the major attraction, as well as a great separated crossing the convention center.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Your time is up.
Okay, I'd be happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
No more further public speakers on general public comment.
Thank you, sir, for coming today. Will somebody from staff be following up? Okay. Great. Okay, and no other comments, so that'll end our public comment period. So before we proceed, I have a couple of quick protocol items to share. First, I will ask board members to please hold your comments and questions until after each agenda item has been presented. And second, when the time comes for board member questions or comments, please raise your hand and wait until you are called upon to speak. Third, please turn on and speak into your microphone when it is your turn to speak. This will ensure that your comments are heard for those listening to the meeting online. And lastly, when it's time to vote, Suhail will call a verbal vote for us. Okay. The first item we have today is the approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Motion to approve.
You got it. No,
Or
you
I'll
beat
second.
me.
Either way.
I'll second you.
Good teamwork. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Suhail, can you please give us a roll call?
Yes. Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? On the motion of Board Member O'Hara, seconded by Board Member Contreras to approve the minutes for the regular board meeting on October 23rd, 2025, motion passes. Board Member Garcia absent.
Great, thank you. Moving on to our consent items, we have 5 items on the consent calendar today. Suhail, have any members of the public registered to speak on the consent or requested that any of the consent items be pulled?
No, Vice Chair.
Okay, great. At this time, is there any board members that have any questions about the consent calendar or want to pull anything? Okay. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Suhail, will you please call a verbal vote?
Yes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? On the motion of Board Member Desmond, seconded by Board Member Edson to approve consent items 1 through 5, motion passes with Board Member Garcia absent.
Okay. And our last item number 6, is on other business. In September, the board approved staff's recommendation to set a public hearing for today to consider modifications to weekend breeze service and proposed changes to the Sorrento Valley Coaster Connection service. Today, we'll conduct a public hearing, and our CEO, Sean Donahue, and Mary Dover, Chief of Staff, and Loni Choloco Voa, sorry. And thank you for spelling it out for me. Manager of Service Planning will present this item. Sean, Mary, and Loni, you have our attention.
Yeah, thanks. I just would note that we had a pretty good conversation about this last month. We're going to recap and kind of go over some of the feedback we received from the public. I think, as we have with other service changes that we've asked for, we are looking at least on the 325, and you'll hear the group talk about it a little bit here, some alternatives that we may try to put into play to help a few customers that would benefit from having the Saturday service on one small portion of the 325 that we may be able to deviate from the 315. But I'll let our crew take it away.
Thank you, Sean. Good afternoon, Vice Chair, members of the board. So at the board meeting on September 18th, the board voted to hold a public hearing today on staff's recommendation to standardize our weekend breeze schedules and proposed modifications to the Coaster Connection service in Sorrento Valley. Over the past 2 months, we've conducted public outreach at stations and virtually and received input from the public on the proposed changes. We brought these recommendations to the board with the intention to rebalance NCTD's resources to focus on areas within our service area. The first part of this public hearing were proposed changes to the Coaster Connection service based on ridership patterns and some operational challenges that we were seeing with the service. So just to put it into context, as we mentioned in the September board meeting, NCTD assumed operation of this service when MTS discontinued it. And just to clarify, this is not in NCTD's service area. So the existing service consists of 5 routes. They relatively mirror what MTS was operating prior. However, we did combine a route and we added a new route, the 471. As we noted in the September board meeting, the 2 routes with the highest ridership are the 473, which connects businesses that are smaller in the area, those businesses that may not be able to provide their own employer-sponsored shuttle to the Sorrento Valley Coaster Station, and then the 479, which connects the UTC business and commercial area and UC San Diego. So based on ridership patterns, NCTD is proposing to shift the service to just 2 routes, the 473 and 479. This ensures that NCTD is maintaining connectivity to the coaster station for the areas that demonstrated the greatest need. Additionally, NCTD received and recently expanded its partnership with UCSD for the UPass. UCSD students pay an additional fee to receive a pass for transit services, which includes Coaster and Coaster Connection. NCTD is estimated to receive approximately $500,000 from this partnership with UCSD, which is similar to the cost of operating this route. Moving to 2 routes instead of 5 will also reduce operational challenges that we see with providing the service outside of our service area. Each of these routes has significant deadhead time. That just means that the operators report to our Oceanside yard, and then they all have to drive the vehicles down to begin the service. So it's a lot of time on the road where the operator is not carrying any passengers. So during the public hearing period, NCTD conducted a Title VI analysis on the proposed changes to identify any unintended impacts to communities surrounding these routes. Title VI compares the demographics of communities surrounding these routes with NCTD's service area as a whole. In the case of this service, the analysis is sort of apples to oranges because we're comparing an area that's outside of our service area and the community served with our service area. So it's not a typical Title VI analysis. And then Yoni will walk you through the results of the analysis.
Thank you. As Mary mentioned, because these routes are out of our service area, this is a non-standard comparison, but using our typical Title VI methodology, we did find that Flex 471 did have a disparate impact because this route serves a higher proportion of minority population than our service area average, and that Flex 478 had a disproportionate burden because this route serves a higher proportion of low-income populations than our service area average. Title VI does require NCTD to attempt to mitigate any this impact with any alternatives, but because this service is outside of our service area and due to the fiscal constraints, NCTD is not proposing any alternative services in this area.
Okay, thank you, Yoni. So the second piece of this service, this public hearing, was proposed changes to the weekend schedules for 4 breeze routes with the goal of standardizing our schedules to just have 1 weekday and 1 weekend schedule, just to make it a little easier for our customers to comprehend the schedule. As we highlighted in the September board meeting, staff's recommendation is to add Sunday service to the 304 and 318 and reduce and eliminate Saturday service on 325 and 347. As you can see, the 325 and 347 have comparatively lower ridership than the 304 and 318 on Saturdays. We expect the shift in this resources to add service on the 304 and the 318 to garner some ridership benefits on Sunday service. We see the population that rides the 304 and 318 using it on weekends, where we don't necessarily see a high propensity of the riders on the 325 and 347 that use it on the weekend. So as you can see, the 347 is entirely covered by the NCTD Plus San Marcos service area, which provides riders on Saturdays and Sundays with an expanded service within the city of San Marcos. Almost the entirety of the 325 is covered by the 315. We did receive public feedback from seniors and some folks with mobility challenges that lived in the areas not covered by the 315. You can see in like the downtown core of Carlsbad, it kind of juts out to Tamarack, where the 315 just stays on Carlsbad Village. And those seniors demonstrated that a reduction in 325 service would significantly limit their transportation. So NCTD took this public feedback from the seniors in the area and reviewed some potential tweaks to the 315 service just to see if we could close that gap. We did find that deviating the 315 for just 3 round trips on Saturdays and Sundays was feasible, and it would result in a relatively low cost to the district. If the board approves the elimination of 325 Saturday service, NCTD will make the deviation of the 315 for those 3 round trips. And that'll be effective in February. And then similarly, we did a Title VI analysis for these changes as well, and Yoni will talk about the results.
So for the weekend standardization, there were 2 disparate impacts found, one of which is adding service to the 304, as this area serves a lower minority population than our service area average. However, the Title VI methodology utilizes demographic populations that are spatially adjacent to the route, but the data from the 2023 SANDAG onboard survey found that actually 80.5% of Breeze 304 riders identified as a minority, meaning that the folks that actually use the 304 were 30% more minority proportional than our service area average. So we're not proposing an alternative to this disparate impact. We also found that there was both a disparate impact and disproportionate burden for the removal of Saturday service to the Breeze 347, seen here as well. However, we are proposing that the existing NCTD Plus service act as an alternate to the service, offering a greater weekend span of service for passengers. We also conducted a robust level of outreach to collect feedback on the proposed changes, including in-person outreach to meet passengers where they are, We conducted in-person outreach at Palomar College Transit Center, Carlsbad Village, as well as Sorrento Valley Station during peak periods in the morning and afternoon. For the first time, NCTD also conducted virtual open houses as a complement to the in-person outreach, allowing riders more opportunity to share feedback and pose questions directly with NCTD staff. The level of feedback we received, as seen in the board packet, is a testament to our successful reach of the affected passengers.
Okay, so today we are asking the board to conduct the public hearing and then approve the following proposed service changes: elimination of flex routes, the Coaster Connection service 471, 472, and 478, the elimination of Saturday service on Breeze 325 and 347, and the addition of Saturday service on Sunday service, right? Sorry, typo. Sunday service on Breeze 304 and 318. The changes we're proposing to the Coaster Connection service and the 347 and 325 will provide us with the resources that we need to greater expand the service in our service area for the populations that we see have the greatest need. It also allows us to make our schedules easier to read by moving to one weekend schedule as opposed to different schedules on Saturday and Sunday. If the board does approve staff's recommendation to eliminate Saturday service, just to reiterate, on the 325, staff will deviate the 315 to cover those riders. And with that, Yoni, Sean will take any questions.
Great, thank you for the presentation. Sue, do we have any public comments on this?
Yes, we do have 2 public speakers via Zoom. I'll call the first speaker, Glenn Leader.
Yes,
Okay, Glenn, you have 3 minutes.
okay. I was waiting to hear what would happen regarding the 325. And I'd be interested to see how the 315 will be deviated on Saturdays in order to incorporate the changeover so that we on the 325 will still be covered. That's it for right now.
Okay, thank you. We'll try to get you an answer right now.
Okay, thank you.
Are you prepared for that?
We'll take the rest of public comment and then we'll
okay.
respond.
Great.
Okay, the next speaker is Jack Lee.
Hello, I'm referring to the Coaster Connection. I think NCTD is recommending eliminating 471, 472, and 478. My recommendation is keeping 2 buses, but having a Coastal Connection east and west, and combining all those routes so that you don't have any passenger loss. So 471, 472, 473 will cover the east side of Sorrento Valley. 478 and 479 will cover the west side. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair, there's no further public comment.
Great, thank you.
So yes, so the 325 or the 315 deviation, so on those 3 selected round trips, the 315 will leave Carlsbad Village Station, it'll make a right onto Jefferson, and then it'll make a left onto Chestnut, I believe, and then a right onto Pio Pico, and then a left onto Tamarack. It'll basically mirror the 325 service as it stands now in that downtown core. So we had connected with the public commenter during the public comment period, and we identified that his residence is on the existing 325 route, so he will be covered by the deviation.
Thank you for that. At this time, do we have any questions or comments by any of my colleagues? Yes, Board Member Edson.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have a number of questions regarding the proposed changes to the Coaster Connection. So I have a question and some comments. So my question is, UCSD students pay additional fee. What's that amount per student? Do you know? I figured Yanni knows everything.
So currently it's $4 per student. This was increased this year from $1.31. The reason for the increase was because students voted to add Flex and Coaster service to their pass.
Okay. I read all of the 78 comments, and 78 is a huge number of comments. I've never seen anything like that in my years at NCTD. I understand the challenges of this route, the fact that we don't have a yard down there to house these vehicles, to maintain these vehicles, to gas these vehicles, fuel these vehicles. So there are some big hurdles here. But we're still talking about maintaining two of the routes, 473 and 479. So those hurdles will continue to exist. In reading these comments, I saw many constructive suggestions, and I always like getting constructive feedback and comments, versus people just complaining when they're saying, hey, have you considered doing this? Like the gentleman, Mr. Lee, who said, hey, could you consider doing one east and one west? I'm not sure of the practicality of that based on the amount of time it would take to run those routes, but that's something that staff would know better. I looked at the ridership, and my concern is that the impact to ridership. So 471 and 472 together combined are 8,360 riders. And we're keeping Carroll Canyon, which is 8,347. 471 and 472, I think, could be easily combined without being too onerous as far as time goes, and maybe an examination of whether the greenfish, Brewing Corporation, if we actually need to cover it all the way up there. So I don't know. I think that there's some potential here. I also looked at, with kind of the same lens as Mr. Lee of combining 478 and 479, maybe at least twice a day, like during peak commute, especially if those biotech workers, there were a lot of comments that they were willing to pay more, that they're willing to sit on the bus a little longer. They seem to just want to be able to get to work still and not have to drive cars and be able to use public transportation as it should be and continue to use the coaster. So, I think this is core riders. I realize it's not in our service area, but I am hoping that there's more that we can do to consider continuing to include some of this coaster connection service.
Yeah, I would say we looked at a few of those routes, some of the routes that exist that we looked to eliminate. There were organizations that already had shuttles that they're running to and from the transfer station who had conversations with us about subsidizing the service. The real issue in adding more routes is twofold. The distance from any location that we currently have is essentially money that is lost for the short time that we're in Sorrento Valley. Adding more routes requires us to have more people and equipment. Having people on the bus longer is not an option for us because they won't make the coaster schedule. So if we're off by 5 minutes, they have to wait 55 more minutes for a train. And that to us is not, that's not an acceptable item. On the fare situation, we are bound by some of the regional fare structures, so there's only so much that we can charge. And personally, for me, I do struggle with us putting service in an area that's not ours, that is prohibiting us from adding service to our area later. To give you an example of the one route we elected to keep at Coaster Connection is roughly $500,000 to $600,000 a year. That's probably exactly how much money we would need, maybe a little more, to have NCTD Plus in Oceanside. So when we're having conversations about budget situation and some of those things, I absolutely sympathize with that group. But I think that their comments need to be directed at the transit agency that provides service in that service area. And for whatever reason, they have elected to not put service in that area. In fact, my understanding is that they are actively looking to reduce service they already have there now. That area, if you look at MTS's map, is a complete ghost town, all the way up to Torrey Pines. east except for UTC. Everything comes out of UTC and it runs either straight west up the coast and stops. There is no MTS route that goes anywhere near our Sorrento Valley Coaster Station. And one of the conversations that we've had recently with the group was, should we not stop the coaster at Sorrento Valley at all? And the reason that we do is because of the partnership that we have with UCSD. UCSD, when they came to the table, they were adamant that they wanted to find a solution for the students, and that's why we continue to run the West Side, why we want to continue to run the West Side Coaster Connection, because UCSD has come to the table where others have not and said, we're willing to see an increase in the cost of the pass. And I know we've talked about this before, but MTS's UCSD pass actually went down. They went to MTS and said, we don't want to pay what we're paying you anymore and reduce the price they're paying for that pass. Our pass almost tripled. And we added coaster, we added flex, we added a lot of services to it. And so I feel like we have an obligation to make sure that we are connecting students to college. That's a huge deal for me. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't sympathize with those riders at all. I do, but we're looking at how we can best set up our network for the future. And we're talking to cities. Oceanside's a perfect example of we'd like to talk about when we're going to start NCTD Plus. And these are the sort of things that we need to start to talk about in order to put services back in our grid, because we know that the revenues are not going to increase significantly enough for us to be able to make major service changes. I personally, and I think Mary and Yoni have joined me on this, I have full intentions of having conversations with Sandag and MTS about why they're not servicing this area. I would say I'm a little disappointed that we weren't able to get some of the local businesses on board. I thought that might be a decent offset, but for us to go to a biotech firm and say, in order for you to keep this route, we need $500,000, pretty sure they're going to laugh us out of the building. And that's where I struggle with this. I mean, we really did this as sort of a stopgap, and what we haven't seen is the ridership that we really need to probably sustain portions of the service. I would agree that there is a portion of it that does work. There are sections of it that does work. But holistically, it doesn't. I think planning put together a good plan to try to salvage one section of those routes. And I do appreciate that. My instruction to the planning team was to remove everything but UCSD. And they came back and said, listen, I think there's a piece here that we really need to pay attention to. Can we at least run it through the end of the fiscal year or go another year and just see what that ridership yields? And really those areas are places where there aren't agencies that are running shuttles, where there aren't agencies that are sort of contributing to help people get to where they need to go. It's a tough one for me. I 1,000% sympathize with the riders that are down there, and my intention is to have a conversation with Sandag and MTS to try to find a way to fund that. We've also wanted to have a conversation with MTS about maybe finding a way to get into Sorrento Valley Station. We think that might help us out a little bit on some of their peripheral routes. This is not like the end for us. We really want to continue to try to help out our passengers because we know they're on coaster. We know they're coming down on coaster. We do feel some sense of responsibility to that, but I really want to make sure that we're taking care of the cities in our service area that we've committed to, that we're going to do NCTD Plus, and we're going to do some of these other things. And one coaster connection route would essentially have a direct impact on our ability to put NCTD Plus in like Oceanside, for example. I mean, it's almost a direct one-for-one. And so transactionally, yeah, it is what it is. From a sitting in this chair standpoint, I absolutely sympathize with those riders. But I think the planning team has put together a good plan and a stopgap for that. And our next stop, regardless of what happens today, will be to Sandag and MTS to have a conversation about, walk us through why you're continuing to remove service from that area other than UTC. All their routes terminate at UTC, and I'm not sure why they don't go to Sorrento Valley. I'm not sure why they deviate around all those other things, but we're going to do some homework on that.
Well, especially when Sandag talks about the fact that that is the biggest employment center in San Diego County.
Right.
So if it's the greatest employment center in San Diego County, why isn't there public transportation available there? There should be. And I also think, gee, if we did a new 471, 472 combination, is it then a pilot project that we could maybe get some funding for? You know, if
We're
it
looking
gets-
into that. We're trying to find somebody to help us pay for all that.
Right, exactly. Use someone else's money.
It's always my goal.
I agree.
I called Supervisor Desmond's office. He said, "Gonna give you some money."
Thank you, Jim.
Change my number.
Well, the other thing for me is, as someone who worked in Sorrento Valley and
Yeah.
moved back to the States from Asia, living in Tokyo where I had great public transportation, right? And I think, I'm going to buy a house in Solana Beach because I can walk to the train station and get to work at Qualcomm in Sorrento Valley. Well, that was great. I could get to work because Qualcomm had a shuttle. I could not get home from work because that shuttle ended at 4:30. So I think it's also almost a marketing campaign with riders. If you have a problem with us changing this, talk to your employer so they'll support it, right? So looking for opportunities for that public-private, I think is important. And, you know, I mean, if we get the employees engaged, because 78 comments, I mean, that's a pretty big deal for the little bit of marketing. I think that there's a possibility, but I'm a hopeful person.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Member Edson. Any other board members have any comments or questions at this time? Yes, please.
Looking at the 315, I guess the reason was to simplify the routes, and then adding a deviation on 3 trips a day, that seems like it's more complicated. Why not do that trip for all the trips? And how are people going to know about the 3 trips that deviate? So just kind of understanding that nuance.
Yeah, I would note that's not uncommon in our industry. I'd say we're probably one of the few systems that doesn't have A or B routes related to their route structure. Specifically on the 315 and the 325, it has to do with us going north to Camp Pendleton. So when we add in that loop, it throws us out of our time block where we would have to add in another operator essentially to run the route. The deviation piece is essentially, we just mark them on the schedule that we sort of bold them and we say, this will run a deviated route, and we put a picture of that on the schedule. I would say initially, we're going to need to do some pretty significant outreach on that just to let people know what the deal is. But the goal is probably a little less on the efficiency side on the weekends and more consistency of where, like, those routes don't have weekend service now. We want to get 2 weekend service across the board. Some of them don't have Sunday service. We're adding Sunday service in. And so now, essentially, with the 325 deviation, they'll have 3 trips on Saturday and 3 trips on Sunday, which they currently don't have. And we're hopeful that that will garner some ridership. The reason that I think we like the deviations from a planning perspective is, long-term, it gets us thinking about maybe what we just need is a route that runs Vista, and maybe what we need is a circulator that runs locally every half hour that connects people to the one route on Vista. And so if we see a ridership increase on the deviation of the weekend service on that, what it really probably gets us to is we just have a 315 in the future all week, and we figure out how to manage the lower end portion of it on the west. It will require some outreach, but you know, we do a few of those already, and they're marked on the schedule, sort of accordingly bolded, and that either this part of the route doesn't run on this run, or there's a deviation to it with a map that's attached.
Yeah, and I'll just add. So we looked at, right now, the 325 runs 4 round trips on Saturdays. So we're proposing a modest reduction to just do 3. Part of the reason why we don't want to add the deviation on all of the routes, because we only are offering 4 right now, so we can offer, still provide some service, but still, you know, it is a little bit less than what we're currently operating. We will do a significant push to make sure that current 315 riders know that these 3 routes will be deviated. If somebody on accident gets on one of the routes that's deviated, it's about a 10-minute detour. So it won't, you know, hopefully throw off their entire their entire day. But we'll have materials on the buses, we'll have materials at the transit centers, we'll do public outreach, we'll update all of our written materials. We'll definitely make sure that the public is aware that those 3 trips are deviated.
Okay, and then we just watch for ridership and how that's affected and whether or not it's an effective deviation and come back later. And then, I apologize, it's probably in the report, when would the 318 start running on its Sunday services?
February.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Contreras?
Just to follow up on that, when should the board expect to receive a review of the ridership trends?
Yeah, so the board receives the monthly transit operations performance report that has general breeze ridership. I think if the board would like to see a specific report on these types of changes.
100%.
Okay, yeah, we
Yeah.
can certainly work that in.
I think that would be great.
I would say usually 6 months is kind of our buffer on that. It gives us a little bit of time to kind of monitor if we see increases in Sunday ridership.
Okay, fantastic. I look forward to seeing that. A question on the 347, seeing that, this is covered by NCTD Plus. So is the 347, is that a daily thing or is that only on weekends, or can you explain?
It runs Monday through Saturday. So Monday through Friday, we have a schedule, and then we have a little bit of a adjusted schedule on Saturday that's just a little bit less. I would say one of the things, and I remember talking about this in my interview, there are routes out there that exist that maybe the numbers don't always check out. 347 is exactly that route. The reason that route is important is because it connects Palomar College and UCSD, or CSUSM. I almost screwed that up. We're now UCSD today. So those two things I think are important when you're talking about the route. I think known to us, there are portions of San Marcos near the college campuses that do present a little bit of an interesting Title VI analysis. Saturday on the 347, just because I'm near there frequently, it is not really a lot of ridership. Weekdays, I think there's enough transfer between the community college and Cal State San Marcos that we see that good connectivity. I think what students may appreciate a little more, which we have heard through some of our travels, is I would like the ability to get all the way through the city. And NCTD Plus essentially provides them that. Folks that are tried and true fixed routers.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I'm looking at the numbers for NCTD Plus, coming out of San Marcos, they're lower than the Vista numbers and they're lower than the budgeted numbers. And so I'm curious about having a fixed route in the service area and what that difference would be if there wasn't a fixed route and we were just having NCTD Plus. I don't know, is there?
I think, at least from my seat, I would like to think that the ridership would go up on NCTD Plus because I think the 347 is limited in where you can go in San Marcos.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a very small route. And so it begs the question, if we were to eliminate in totality the 347, what kind of budget allocation could be put towards maybe another NCTD Plus shuttle in San Marcos. And so I don't know if that analysis has been done, but I'm just curious, one of the reasons why that I was given that we eliminated a route in Vista was because it was redundant to NCTD Plus. And here I am looking at this 347 and I see that the redundancy is much higher. So I do have to criticize that point and bring up this question. And so I would just like an investigation on what that would look like, if we were to eliminate and increase NCTD Plus. Because I do want to see San Marcos get, to the budgeted amount and beyond. So I don't know. I guess that's something that we can talk about offline. And I want to ensure that the students have excellent service, right? And potentially there's just more conversations that have to happen with the population that's utilizing 347 to understand if there are different changes that NCTD Plus can do in the future that make their experience even better. and we could shift some resources, because that's what we're talking, I mean, when we're looking at elimination of routes, it's always a budget conversation and a shifting of resources. So I don't want to shy away from that. But I do have to ask that question because it just stands out to me a lot.
If I may.
Sure.
So the 347 is still a really effective tool in the city of San Marcos to move people because it connects the colleges with the Sprinter stations. So what we see is that NCTD Plus isn't the most effective tool to move students because there's often start fixed times. So it's better to have a high capacity vehicle to move people. I think that's probably part of the delineation between why the 334 situation is a little bit different than 347. We still do see it as an effective tool. We just don't see that ridership on Saturdays because schools aren't in session. So NCTD Plus will supplement the weekend service effectively because we aren't moving the same amount of people at one time. But the 347 is still the most effective in our view on the weekdays to move people, especially from the Sprinter stations to the colleges.
Yeah, we definitely looked at it because one of my concerns when I first came on board was just as a standalone route, the metrics don't always check out sometimes. I think the difference with some of the routes we've had conversations about are this is directly related to educational institutions. And what the students like is, I know I can schedule my class at Palomar, the bus will pick me up at this time, and I will be at Cal State San Marcos at X time. NCTD Plus, while great, and most of our rides are booked under 15 minutes, there's a little bit of uncertainty there, very much like an Uber would be, that if I get out of here and that bus is on the other side of San Marcos, we may have a problem. San Marcos in the NCTD Plus realm also serves a pretty big area. Which has been somewhat challenging for us on some of our.
I mean, this is why I'm asking the question, because is there a shifting of resources that makes sense? Because we're seeing that in other areas. And so I'm curious. I'm not saying that I would support that, but I do need to ask the question just because it's right in front of me. So and it's something that we can converse about more in the future. And I'm also wondering if we're hearing this directly from the students or if this is something that we assume students are thinking. So, and I mean, do we have a survey or anything with comments from students that are saying that we appreciate the fixed route versus having NCTD Plus? Or is that merely an assumption or an educated guess?
We're probably due to get back out to campus to get the new students. We have.
I
some
highly
historical
recommend
data,
that we move forward and actually get data based on that because I'd rather have data than assumptions. I'm not saying that the assumption is wrong, but it is an assumption. But thank you. I think that's important. And the other thing that I want to call out too is I'm just curious, the Sorrento Valley, when we were first reviewing taking over or utilizing our service to connect folks to their employer in an MTS region service area, one of the big factors was that this was the third most important station for us. Has that number changed?
It's the least used station in our coaster grid right now. And
Okay.
just
That's
based
what I
off-
was wondering because you brought some, I want to
Correct, yeah, it's
highlight.
the least used. And that, I'll be honest with you, that concerns me.
Yeah, well, I want to
because,
highlight because I took note of that you said that you were talking about potentially eliminating it altogether.
In fact, the conversation we had internally was, should it move somewhere else? And the reason we didn't do that was because of UCSD. We feel a strong sense of partnership with UCSD. They stepped up to the table and almost tripled the cost they're paying per student to have our service in the area, in addition to the work that they do with MTS on the Blue Line. If every single person that took the coaster connection stopped riding the coaster today, it would be like 1% of our coaster ridership.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, that's a significant change for it to have gone from our third most utilized station to now being very underutilized. But I do appreciate that there's a consideration of this promise that we have to students and to specifically UCSD and the fact that they are upping the amount that the students are paying, right? And the students have elected to do so. I think that's really critical, but I am really shocked at just in a few years, the difference. And it makes sense because I've been seeing the coaster ridership trends, and you've talked about it to us, and shown us that the weekend is when we're seeing a lot more ridership. And so, yeah, I find that really interesting, and I just had to kind of dig in a little bit more, but, okay. With that, I am, just going to make a motion to approve staff's recommendation. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Board Member Contreras. Do you have a comment? Sure. Okay, there's a second. I know that Board Member Shin had indicated that you had some comments.
Just a couple questions.
Okay, but we do have a motion in a second, but we'll continue the comments and questions.
I'll keep it quick just because,
Take all the time
you're
you
saying Sandag a lot, and I felt my whole body on fire because I'm on the board. So I just want to confirm, so MTS kind of failed to be able to pencil this out, and they transferred this over to NCTD?
Yeah, I think to Director Contreras' point, it was a very highly utilized station, and so it was advantageous for MTS to run the service with us providing some subsidy to it because it allowed them to transfer to other pieces of their network. I think when the pandemic happened and the ridership dropped, MTS realized pretty quickly that they were having to foot more of the bill than we were willing to subsidize. I think we were at like 350,000, something like that.
In that range.
Yeah, we were in the 350,000 range, and it was costing them, and we expanded it actually, so what they were running was actually costing a little under $1 million. So they said, I won't do this anymore. We picked it up because we did feel a sense of obligation to some of the coaster riders, but it just is not, we've just not seen this rise in ridership. We have not seen this resurgence to that coaster station, these routes. And I think that's been a critical driver for us.
And then, like, kind of the description you were saying earlier when you were answering previous questions, it almost seems like your tone and tenor is saying that if we allocate a bunch of resources into this, we may fail an overall program across the board for North County?
Yeah, I think, and this is just my perspective, we're seeing this very stagnant sales tax scenario, like our revenues are very flat. I mean, we're seeing enough of an increase in revenues to essentially cover our increasing cost every year. And I think we have some really great opportunities for our NCTD Plus in Fallbrook, NCTD Plus in Oceanside, changes or deviations to some of our routes. The weekend service is actually an addition. It's not really a subtraction. It's adding service to routes on Sundays and providing continuity on weekends where we just have one schedule. So whoever works that shift on Saturday doesn't have to worry about whether or not that bus is canceled early on Sunday. That money essentially could be designated to future projects that we're doing here or some type of a change in service in our service grid. And so for me, financially, that's where I'm at. It's not that I lack the compassion for the riders that are in that area. I absolutely do, and I'm going to work to fight for them in other areas that we hold seats.
Gotcha. The one thing I noticed when I was looking at MTS's, the reports that they provide annually and monthly, they have something called a Policy 42 Performance Monitoring Report, and in it had an annual route statistic. In that statistic, it showed cost per passenger and then subsidized cost per route per passenger.
Yeah, we have something.
I didn't see that on our website, and I'm just wondering, like, in these reports, it would almost be nice when you're sitting there and you want to take your blood pressure medications because the costs are getting so high and we are subsidizing and maybe we can't provide these routes and we have to shift money. Those metrics would be great to see on these reports when being received so we can feel that with you guys.
Yeah,
as opposed to just this, oh yeah, this is stressful for us. But if we're seeing it truly not pencil, then we need to get creative. It's in my personal opinion. And so when you do bark at Sandag, we can have a good pragmatic conversation.
And I've mentioned to the board before, but we're getting a little closer. We recently, about a year ago, started a business intelligence department. We've never had that here before. And we've always had that statistical data, but just not available to the public. I know our website is interesting sometimes. I want to give our I want to give our marketing team a big round of applause because they're dealing with a third party, and I think they've done a phenomenal job trying to make sure that things are where they need to be. Our goal is to wholesale that entire website and rebuild it to the way that we would like it to be, and that would include real-time mapping for buses and a place where people can go and get stats for every route, including ridership and on-time performance, right there, available on the website, almost in real time. We have to scrub some of the data. It takes us a couple weeks sometimes to scrub through some of the data, but we want to get it posted for the public so they can go straight to one spot on the website. We've added a lot over the years. I think when we started that website, we were just 3 modes, kind of moving along. Lyda Galvin, who is our manager over our marketing team, has done a phenomenal job of trying to take a lot of stuff that we've changed over the years and jam it into the website. And to be fair, I have a lot of demands on that, and so I give her a lot of credit for managing my expectations on some of that stuff. And so kudos to her and that group. But we really want a refresh of our data. I think one thing that we heard last year that bothered me a little bit was when somebody said, feel like you're hiding the information, came to the board meeting and said that. And I'm like, no, it's right there. And actually, I want it to be available for everybody. I want our financial information to be available. I want our ridership to be available. I want ridership data, trends to be available, cost per passenger to be available, how much we get subsidized. I want all of that available to the public so that when they are looking at our service can come armed with information. And so I appreciate that feedback. More than happy to share that information. We have it. If you want it, we have it. We're more than happy to share it.
I know offline I'll be asking a million questions, but last but not least, so in the SANDAG meetings, I feel like sometimes there's this siloed conversation between what we're doing in the private sector with moving people and emerging technologies and what we're saying we need to do to plan and forecast in SANDAG for what seems to be previous technologies. Is there a strategic planning in here? And then are those things that can create solutions for what we're seeing?
They are. I think one of the things that I struggle with, and again, I want to give kudos to Mario. I think his leadership has been phenomenal since the day he walked in the door. I thought that was a good move by SANDAG to do that. I think he's been a very no-nonsense, let's have a conversation. In fact, the other day he called me on the phone when he was getting ready to walk into an office in Sacramento and said, I want to say this on your behalf. Will we sign off on it? And I said, yeah, sure. I can't say. But for me, I think that the public transit industry has always been too far behind technology. And because of the way that we have to work through certain aspects of projects, by the time we actually get to a point where we're doing things, we're either 20% over budget and working on 5-year-ago technology. And that's not okay. We need to get better and more efficient at the things that we're doing. And I think Mario's invested in that. And the best example I can give is we have all these projects that are pigeonholed for money that either came from SB 125 or some other pool of money that exists, and it just sits there. And we have shovel-ready projects right now that aren't funded, that are unfunded, where we need to be able to shift that money immediately, start to work on these projects, and then figure out where we're going to get the money for the long-term projects later. And our Chief of Staff, Mary Dover, there's nobody better in this business I've seen who does that than Mary. And that's always been our approach. And I love that question because I 1,000% agree that by the time we get to a space where a project's completed, we're working off of 3 years ago technology. And that's not okay because now we're already 3 years behind on day one on something that we're going to need to replace 10 years from now.
Yeah, I'll end at this. I bring up this kind of, maybe it's controversial question, and I brought it up to SANDAG, but it was a thought when I woke up one day. This guy right here replaced payphones. We have 0 payphones left in the public, and I wonder what will happen with bus stops as emerging technologies take place, where I know I'm being picked up at the place I want to be picked up at. And so I get nervous that we're planning for something here on the public side, and on the private side, they're like, we're getting rid of those things. And so I just leave that to you guys, and then I'll maybe never come back here again.
Good stuff, Board Member Shen. Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
I just kind of had as an aside that kind of goes off of that and the change of direction. Look at what we're looking at here and listen to the comments of our CEO about Shono Valley in today's case, and then I look back at when we basically closed down the roads that went from the Palomar Station to the Carlsbad office parks. And I just gotta wonder if we're spending too much time worrying about getting people to these high-value job areas. And if we need to research and all of us think about, like, people who work in these places really want to take a bus, a train, a breeze? Or is their call culture going to put them there? And do we need to put that money into a different service? And I just, a lot of these routes that we see going to these, what would typically be in a city, high route destination, maybe in San Diego, those aren't. And no statistics to base it off of, no data to base it off of, other than the fact that every time it comes up here, it's a route that we're cutting. And we're cutting it because no one's using it. And so I think that's something to look at, is maybe we have to initiate, we can't serve everybody. Maybe we shouldn't serve everybody. Maybe we should serve the people who want this and need this. And that some of the people we serve, and today it's Sorrento Valley, last time it was the clear explanation of off of Palomar Airport Road. They don't want it, so why try to keep pushing the ball uphill? I don't know that there's an answer, if that goes anywhere, and it just piggybacks, and it's aside from today's vote we're about to have, but I think it's something we need to look at, and keep in mind that this seems to be a common theme just in what a short year that I see us repeating a lot in conversation. So something to look at before is, are the areas we think we need to be necessarily the right areas as far as these businesses go?
I think that's why we're here, though. I mean, I think that revisiting these commonly as things shift and being efficient, I don't think it's easy. I'm really bad at that. In my council meeting, I get in trouble too. I do, I don't know what it is. But, I think this is difficult for the staff. It's always difficult to cut services. But I think you have to be fiscally responsible, and you need to make the tough decisions. And it is, Julie and I both looked at each other like, those comments are heartbreaking. So I think the efficiency, the team, I think, is doing well, and I applaud you, and I can feel the pain that it is for you all. But, I think that one thing that's always going to increase public transportation is the need, and I think that the team has shifted those needs to where the ridership is more. We have to do that, and unfortunately, it's going to cut out people that use it, but we have to be smart where we're using our resources and money, and I think, not to be a Debbie Downer, but I think money's going to get tighter for a little while, so we have to be even more efficient. So that's why I'm supportive of this, but it's painful.
No, and I agree. Really what I'm saying is I think that we look at, if I go to Sorrento Valley, I wish I could remember the name of the coffee shop there, right when you get off the coast or on the other side. Terrific coffee, definitely check it out. It's closed Saturday and Sunday, and there's not a soul around. And as are, when you go up in the Mesa, a ton of other businesses, because nobody's there. And here we are talking about how to reroute it. Maybe the answer is there isn't one. And people going up there aren't looking for it, and they're happy to use alternative services, in which case we should just get the message. I don't know if that's what everybody wants to hear, but that's what I see. And I just felt it was important to note. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and thanks again, staff, for the wonderful presentation. And I think we've heard from everybody, so, and we do have a standing motion and second. So Suhail, could you go ahead and do a verbal roll call, or verbal vote?
Yes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Board Member Desmond, to close the public hearing on staff's recommendation regarding the proposed service changes and approve the proposed service changes effective February 2026. Motion passes. Board Member Garcia absent.
Thank you. CEO Sean, do we have a report today?
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep it brief. Holiday Express starts this Saturday. I was incorrect in my email to the board. The kickoff was not 11 o'clock in the morning. It is 9 a.m. in the morning. Is that correct? Even earlier. So please join us super early on Saturday if you want to kick off the Holiday Express. Shout out to the marketing team. That sold out super quick. Every year, that's a pretty exciting deal. 3 of the 4 nights 3 of the 4 days we're doing this, we actually have a night run at 5 o'clock. So please come join us if you can. If you saw in the email, the part we talked about the DOT proposal on the Highway Trust Fund, I'm working on that. I'm actually going to be in DC the first week of December. Part of that is for legislative, and part of that is to discuss this DOT Highway Trust Fund. I have a seat on the APTA Executive Committee, so we meet with members of the congressional makeup teams and just kind of walk through what some of these things mean, and we got a meeting with DOT. I will say I appreciate the work done by Mark Molinaro, who's the FTA administrator. We received a grant for $16 million from Bus and Bus Facility to replace some of our buses here in the fleet, so we're pretty excited about that. For anybody who attended the MISBTA committee meeting here, we gave an update on safety and security and NCTD Plus. Won't go over those, just to say that we've seen a lot of success on our security, really our security outreach and the work that our TESU Sheriff's Department team has done. We've seen a decrease in arrests over the past year, which is exactly what we wanted. We're starting to see a little less citations, and we're seeing a lot more outreach with our folks out in the system. It was really sort of the goal that we were trying to accomplish there. And so kudos to the San Diego Sheriff's Office TESU team who works with us in our security detail there. The Oceanside Transit Tunnel is opening Monday. We're having an event Monday at 4 o'clock. So please come down and join Director Joyce and I at that event. We're going to be pretty excited to do it. If you haven't seen it, we went down and got a sneak peek. It is absolutely gorgeous. The artwork they did in there was phenomenal. The painting that they did on the side of the parking garage about a year or so ago was phenomenal. I really appreciated the work they did there. So a lot of good stuff going on. At the Oceanside Transit Center, the walkway that we started on about 6 months ago that is between the coaster station and the Sprinter station is almost done. So now you no longer have to make the half-mile track all the way down to the other side and come around. You can, it might have been when I came here before I interviewed it, I looked at it and I went, holy cow, what happened here? So we're pretty excited that that's kicking off. It seems like low-hanging fruit. It's really not. Now it gives us another opportunity to drop people off at the other side of the transit center. We're going to get a TVM over there so you can buy tickets for the coaster at some point in time. We're working through that, but excited to have that up and running. And that's all I had, Vice Chair, unless anybody has any questions for me.
I don't see any questions. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. Moving right along, do we have any other board member comments or correspondence? Director Joyce.
Oceanside did vote to move ahead the Oceanside Transit Center. I thought you were going to give that report.
No, I didn't want to leave that for you. I didn't want to step on your toes here.
Yeah, 4-1 and 5-0. So heading to Coastal Commission. Call your friends. I know the team worked a lot on it, so it was a really big deal last night. I did want to ask staff, legislative advocacy season is upon us. And we talked last year a lot about, hey, how can we multiply our efforts, because a lot of us actually do that for our cities. And so I just want to see if there's any way we can put together packets or maybe even do a subcommittee that just talks about advocacy. And that way we're all singing the same song when we head into those offices that Mario so nicely prepared for us ahead of time.
Yeah, I would say that's a two-way street for everybody too. When we go to DC and we have opportunities to meet with our elected officials or Sacramento, we always want to talk about local projects, even if it has nothing to do with us. If you got something that's cooking and it's a good deal, let us know. We're more than happy to put in a plug for you while we're up there. We've always done that. Mary always does a good job of putting together our sort of one-pager that has our legislative items on it. We'll get that out to the board, make sure everybody has a copy of it. And we typically go to DC in March, but this year they've moved it back to April or May. For some reason, we always go when they're not in session. I don't know why they do that. And I think the rationale behind that is we get to talk to staff, specifically on the appropriation side. So we really get to talk to the staffers at the House and the Senate about, without all the folks kind of dragging them one way or the other. We get their dedicated time. They're working through our projects, and so.
I thought it was because it's warmer in March.
It is. I've never made a trip to DC in March where I was like, man, this is awesome. So maybe April will be different. We'll get to see the cherry blossoms. So, but likewise, if you have projects that you think are important to you, please let us know. I always take time out of 5 minutes out of our time to say, here's things that are happening in North County that you need to pay attention to. Please support our cities on those endeavors. They mean a lot to us. We're probably a part of that somehow or another. So please support those, and we'll get you out the one pager so that everybody has that available.
Just wanted to say happy belated 250th to my fellow Marines, if anyone's out here and are. It's the whole reason why I came down here. I was one of those lost 18-year-old Marines, not knowing where to go, probably taking the bus. And then a belated happy Veterans Day to some of us veterans that served as well. And then good health to Priya when she gets back here and having her brand new little baby.
I would just like to make a request that the events that you talked about that are happening, the various events that board members are invited to, is there a way we could get an email, like more specific, the dates and times to meet and who we RSVP to and things like that? That would be helpful, kind of ongoingly too. More work for you, sorry, Mary, but it would be really helpful. Thanks.
Also, happy birthday to Jewel.
Oh, today? Happy birthday. Well, I was going to start, and I thought we're still on. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jewel. Happy birthday to you. Yay! Dark chocolates for you.
Okay, let's keep us rolling here. Do we have any remaining public communications that we have not gotten to yet?
No, we do not.
Okay, great. Then just a couple of announcements. Our next scheduled meetings are the Performance Administration and Finance Committee meeting, which is going to be Monday, December 15th, 2025 at noon. And then we have an Executive Committee meeting that's going to be on Thursday, December 18th at noon. And then we have our regular board meeting that same day, Thursday, the 18th at 2 p.m. And I believe that is it. We are adjourned. Thank you.